Okay. All right, so since we're now live, we'll again, the second time. We can't. John, can you hear us again? Okay, can we proceed?
I did do have a few remarks.
Please, ma'am.
So we have a camera here with the built-in microphone that is very sensitive. So we have to ask that everyone, let's do our speaker. Otherwise, the camera's we are used and have a few people.
Remember how I came up with this problem? Either lays not here. Morning, everyone. Pick up, let's see here. Welcome to the group. Right, so thank you for being here. Welcome everybody. So our first order of business are the minutes from our September 14 meeting. Very. We do the second discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, aye, please. Aye.
And then follow up from the margin.
That takes us to the consent agenda section of the board agenda. We do this afternoon for everyone's benefit. That continues on page 50. And I understand that the people are going to come meet us in each of these, know that who they are. So it's there. Chad, you could push it out.
Yeah, item number one on the discussion. Federation accepting approval of program stating it states the calories. It's a replacement shed of raised this the original federal time.
I didn't think we did, but it's one of the great improvements. Okay. All right. Any questions? Good. All right. Second item. We'll take your so, okay.
This request to utilize access to our payments matching to do some improvements to our on-premise data center. You recall back in 20, when the Hale Library fire took place, we had a data center in basically a library. Oh, I need to be louder. Okay, so we did the library fire, the data center. We've moved it out and co-located it with the college of engineering's premise data center that they use for research. So this program would basically do some facility enhancements and updates to HVAC systems and other systems in that area to make it up to standards. We had an incident over summer where a water line broke and it's chilling capacity to that area and temperatures rose quite dramatically. Don't impact the HVAC systems. So we're using one of our for maintenance 1-to-1 match dollars, matching that also then so because of the Hale Library fire, we've been working with our insurers. We've pretty much closed out their insurance, and we have a little bit of dollars left from that settlement that we are dedicating to. So this is a request to utilize the previously approved funds for raising a mandatory in the gymnasium. We submitted and that project was approved in June, I believe. And so this is just bringing it back forward. We've got a program statement and a project out so that we can put it on there. I think so.
One discuss.
So again, this is our final step from this. Fix it up, take it down, sell it. So I think we're covered. This is a request to sell property. It's already been approved by the 2022 legislature and also approved by the board. And so we're bringing it back. We've had full appraisal and selling it to a company that exceeded that appraisal $62,000. So we're just looking for. I would love to take. I would like to take credit, but I can't. Yeah. And then the next one, Mr. Chairman. Oh, sorry. I'm right. The next one is again the final action selling the property in 15 acres. Also approved during the 2022 legislature, also approved by the board this year. So we've worked and had appraisals and have our foundation partners who will then develop that land. That becomes part of it. That's where I'm sure we'll hear a lot about that tomorrow.
The Hale Medical Center is requesting an amendment to a capital program that had already been approved. This is, the first one is for reflection center. And some of you may remember we had transferred via the master ground lease that we have at the medical center property to the University of Kansas Health System. to facilitate their construction of a advanced radiation oncology facility called a proton therapy facility on our campus. That was university-owned property. And we had transferred that roughly 4 years ago, I think, to the health system to build that new facility. On that facility that was held by the university was a old chapel that was on our campus. And so that was demolished to make room for the proton therapy center. And what the reflection center is ostensibly a replacement of that earlier chapel that we lost. It is a facility that we're building into the lower level of an existing building that was the former bookstore on our campus. And there are two amendments. This had already been approved, but the amendments are to include a number of deferred maintenance components into the project, which needed to be done for the building, which is going to be a center part of our campus for some long while in that building. And so we're going to take the opportunity while we have the project underway to do some deferred maintenance work. And then there have been some inflationary pressures from the original time in the budget for this project. And so there's a new amount associated with this project that was greater than the amount we did earlier. So that's what it was.
Sure, we'll be fine. Yes. That's a description of the procedure that you have in place to ensure that transactions between the university on the one hand and the hospital on the other are done commercially reasonably, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure. That's part of the process of giving an amendment to that lease, that master lease agreement. There is a requirement, and we had that approved by the board when we did that, for there to be appraisals and, process of establishing value. And we went through that process. And then that master lease agreement, just as a little bit of background, when prior to 1998, the health system was part of the University of Kansas Medical Center. And in 1998, through a legislative act, the health system was taken out of the university through this act, the legislature. And at that time, property was transferred from what had been the Unified University organization to the health system to support the split of the health system from the university. And there have been a number of amendments over the ensuing years where we have added things to that lease, and this particular one.
And as the consideration of price on these kinds of things established by appraisal?
There is a process to have appraisals done. In the end, it was essentially a negotiation between the university and the health system that actually exceeded appraisal.
Then you had both parties had it available to them, the appraisal deal, right? Okay. Great, thank you.
Okay, sure. Any other questions on that? We have one other item, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
So
No, on page 53.
this second one is an amendment again to the earlier capital plan for a renovation, rehabilitation, I guess, of internal medicine offices in buildings on our campus. There's a suite of offices that house physicians and other staff of that department. The internal medicine department is the largest department by far on the medical center campus. I think there are some 300 physicians in that department. So this is a renovation of office space that houses the chair of that department and other members of that staff, not entire but office space, non-clinical space, but it's very importantly located, easy walking distance to the health system where they do a lot of practice patient care, as well as explore in the university campus for research or something to do. And so it is a renovation of an entire space. And the cost, had gone up, I think from the time we initially estimated. This is to get this on our plans. So we can move forward. Of that renovation, and it will be funded entirely with non-general use state appropriation. I should have mentioned that on the last one as well. The funding source for maintenance will be the state funding we match. The rest of it will be non-state. Likewise.
Okay, great, thank you. Joe, are you checking it?
This is a request to approve a lease agreement between the Alumni Center by University, the new Welcome Center that will open right now in February. We're going to have 20 of our admission staff in the building, and that's going to move them from place to allow us to consolidate on operations. This is our share of lease agreement, and see the operation that is in our budgets and our financial plan. And we're also, the lease also has, and we're deeply going to consider, long-term maintenance in there as well. So we can make sure the technology stays refreshed and modern. That's really, this is a 21st century kind of open center, very intelligent story. The video tours, it's really, so this is a lease agreement. So we, endowment and alumni raise money to build the space. Paying our share of the space. This is a share. That was the next one.
There's of course, a significant effort going to Fiscal related to student success, student retention, the internet with state, et cetera. I assume that as the structure of the actual physical design of this building, in particular, the folks who are housed in that building, you all consider, because it's what else?
That's correct. And they're moving out of the old Welcome Center, the new Welcome Center, to be able to consolidate several services together. So students don't have to go to 3 places. Either one. This goes way beyond.
If I had a recommendation from the board of state department, that's it. This project signed by with that. Yes.
Yes, that and else good other thing.
Thank you.
So,
Was that on page 54?
okay, so this is the Kansas Law Enforcement Training Center looking to need space in Parsons, so that they can do remote learning classes. So it's just a simple piece to have, rather than having everything have to come down or it's another application. So it's that's it. Providing the training with Bronx State.
Does the revenue from operating, will the revenue from operating this particular facility match the expenses? How does that?
So KLATC has their own budget from funding state. Request to legislative action is going to be needing that transformation. State is there. This this is within their budget. It's separate and apart from the university, funded from.
So won't have an effect either way.
That kind of.
Yes, so at the bottom of page 54 on the consent agenda is an item from the University of Kansas, and Jeff can speak to this. They are seeking to expand the tuition assistance benefit for their staff and dependents, and starting this kind of spring. So I think we could describe what KU has offered to its staff, lesser benefit than the other campuses. So we're to see that they can get theirs. And
One of the problems I think about students, whether they're that is an important attention and issue we have management faculty, staff, and looking at the group peers, we were not competitive in that area. So it is actually a good financial plan to expand from one class up to 5 hours, employees up to 12 hours per year, and expand the independent benefit, which was really just a Pepsi scholarship at just $1,000, adding 12 hours, 6 hours per semester for dependents, which makes us more competitive in terms of attention and I think it's money well spent. And you know, the estimate is it could cost us $2 million more, but that assumes that if we get somebody who is going to come in, I understood that they have a year, it costs. I say that funded from our endowment as a sort of that. They are hopefully it gives us, it makes us better.
How much cash estimation went into your $1 million?
I think that's the high side. We know how many people take it now. Say your mother, father. So I think we have a conservative estimate. It could probably. If people taking that, we hope get better. To 50% of that.
First of the green break.
Is that
Well, just as one person's opinion. Lots of conversations about our teams. This is the place we can offer what we do. So
I agree.
So that traces us to your section that I'm sending that.
page 92.
All you can say is what we do. Okay. Wait, I'm supposed to be saying. Okay. So we do on first really trying to advance all these things as far forward as we can. Two sheets of paper and use money. Set us up for all the Google standards. So You want to be?
No, I. It's quite sensitive, but we're not speaking right now, for everyone to be able to hear. We may not have a good connection as well. So I think if we use them.
So. Soft spoken. Often.
May I proceed, Mr. Chairman?
Please do.
So first up, K-State, we are requesting, obviously, a housing, increase to our housing and dining rates. There on the table on page 92, you get a sense of for just a general low occupancy and limited dining option comparisons to 3.9% increase. Then if you look at newer construction, which obviously then brings a higher price tags, bringing those together is about 5% overall. It's important to note for K-State, we have held our rates flat for 2 years despite all of the inflationary impacts that we've been facing to our operations. A couple examples of those, just to highlight, K-State housing dining office, just like everybody's bills that they're getting at the grocery store, your energy utility usage, all of that has gone up significantly this last year. We're facing upwards of a 6% increase in our utilities, our electric utilities, natural gas, we're spending about $100,000 a month in the housing areas. Facing significant labor shortages, both in regular employees and students. Part of that is the pressure that we have to increase our salaries to be more competitive, especially in that student labor, be more competitive in the local market when fast food restaurants can offer a much higher salary than normally pay our students. Some just brief examples of the food cost increases that we've had. If you look at just eggs, 15 dozen. In 2021, that was $18.29. 2022, $53 today. So huge increases. Think about all the eggs that we serve. Huge price inflation on there. Another one would be potatoes, 100 count, going from $23 in 2021. $46 today. So we're seeing huge pressures on our food costs, and we generally spend about $3 million in bulk food every year. So you can just imagine that impacting our budgets. We're not standing still. Obviously, our housing and dining unit is going to be extremely efficient in how they're staffing their areas and also looking for cost savings as well. We have kept our strong complex closed the last 2 years. That has saved us about $1.3 million annually, so that's saving about 550 beds offline and kind of areas. So that saves quite a bit of costs. We did refinance a lot of our debt that we had outstanding. That generated some additional savings. And then that unit is also under a bit of a soft hiring freeze, holding a lot of administrative positions vacant, focusing instead on utilizing our limited labor dollars to frontline staff, so providing that service to. The result of the increase, I'd like to say that it will help build our reserves. I think it's going to help us stay steady state with our increased costs. The unit is working diligently to try to build that reserve up. It was greatly impacted when the pandemic hit, and we had to do all those refunds to students at the end of that semester when the pandemic persisted. So they're working diligently to try to build those reserves back up, understanding all the pressures that they're under to operate. Then
That's what we see.
yeah, that would be the financial piece of it. So they're trying to build that up as best they can to try to be in compliance with what we established in policy. I think it's, I'm looking at my director of housing in the background, I think it's 1 year debt service and 90 days operations. Is that right? Yeah. So that's what we're trying to keep in that background. That's a very conservative approach. Obviously, we want to have at least coverage for Salina campus also is increasing, requesting a rate increase. That ranging anywhere from 7 to 80% based on different that are available and being presented. They also held their rates flat for 2 years, but a big difference in terms of how that campus is evolved. They've evolved from what we consider a commuter campus to more of a residential campus. In fact, we are one of our projects that was approved and a new residence hall on that campus by additional housing for the students, but also there's a significant storage in that community. So you're seeing request for those rate increases as well. They're also looking at how are managing and operating and trying to be as efficient as possible, considering looking at integrating their traditionally standalone custodial team, housing and campus, integrating those together to find efficiencies and renegotiating their food service contract. That is a difference between on the Manhattan campus and on campus. Manhattan is and we operate all of the staff, all of that food service. Salina campus does have a contract, so there is. And the Salina campus has been working pretty good shades of that. So that's in essence a quick look at our housing study. I do have, like I mentioned, as my phone friend, I have Derek Jackson, I'm Director of Housing and Dining. I also have the Vice President for Student Life.
Changes the meal
And that is one of the things that Derek and his team have been working on, different flexible options, providing kind of a limited option that weekly doesn't meal option, so try to reduce costs, and also providing an option for students that want to live in the residence hall after the first year, provides some flexibility. But on the other hand, you want to also because that is student success, you want students fed and taken care of, and so you don't want them skipping necessarily meals. Since that would impact living.
I'm just looking here. Next budget. I think I would have component inflation component. Given what's the percentage we use today? But the relevance is we find out what we're asking for and then compare that with these inflation adjustments. Question might be, what are the different ways?
dollar amount we asked for 25.
It's five. It's a spot there, so we're-
I think like everything you said.
I said, we had five, I've already
Yeah.
been five. In general. I'm glad to see it.
So this question has to do with anticipating possible legislative questions. They see that in the overall we ask for 5% increase, and then they see that increase for housing and dining is from 2.1 to 4.8. How do we answer that? Why is that? Why 5, everything else?
Why is there a
Correct.
variance between the rates of growth CFO can speak to this, but I would say the basket of goods that we're purchasing for this particular function is a little bit different. And what's happening at this campus level is much broader. This is a very specific business unit within the campus, has its own separate financials and different expenses. I would refer to it as CFO with the thoughts.
That's fine. It is a very special use. Like the basket of goods. And so I think that reflects in
A specific example of that. Perhaps in some areas with is as service. It's much more simple.
I think the space is that we possibly do with advocating legislative resources. Mindful of questions they might. This is one you might see these inflationary requests and challenge us about progress. So just as long as we're knowledgeable and prepared for that discussion.
Also, it's flat. For student affordability. So this is me trying to balance all that as well. So I think it's kind of it's going to be hard to ask for inflation costs for all of the state.
And final question, what makes up the difference of, for example, definition is 0.1%? I mean, less.
I can say, can't speak for. We have a significant earnings reducing capital. So we're below inflation. To make sure that things are affordable, competitive, but there is both of our housing managers. See all.
Probably a lovely position, which is us.
Good morning. Joined by my colleague, Terry Hall, student affairs as well, financial science, city questions, Terry. So WSU is requesting an increase to a new to 3%. We have a dining contract with Charles. Even our contract allows for a maximum of 3% as for student and both dedicated costs. If it's higher than that, they have to negotiate and have it. So they've also, Charles has had a substantial increase in revenue, getting pretty close to pre-pandemic levels. It's the 3% is for months. Now, on the housing side, we're requesting to increase 3%. The logic behind that is that they have the highest demand. Those students typically can afford increases, and what we're trying to do with the other component, which is we're requesting an increase of other rooms, doubles and triples at 1.6% to keep those rooms as affordable as possible. And to speak to Regional Winter's comment, it is a balance between affordability. What we'd like to charge and what we can charge, and we're probably a lot, we're trying to keep it as affordable as possible. We have mandatory requirement for fetching on campus, so we're trying to keep as affordable options as we can available to these. We've not raised rates in 3 years, and so we have maintained expenses as low as possible, but we need to increase rates to pay for the increase of utilities, labor, as well as to grow and retain our debt reserves. Page 104, you'll see our debt coverage is currently includes debt service. We'd like to get that to 2 times that service in 60 days of cash meeting. So we'll continue to do building that reserve. And to complement Jeff said in regard to housing, all of this housing, our inventory, all of this housing is 2015 as well. So we don't have the ongoing deferred maintenance, but we're building reserves, so when we get to that. So we'll see that's good. Entertain any questions? Thank you.
So we're skipping. Very good, get out of here. Every members of the committee, ours is a similar story to the other ones. We have a 4.6% on average increase in the housing side. It's about $1.4 million. And the reason for that, as I mentioned a minute ago, our inflation and deferred maintenance, and the increase ranges by housing type. But the most common one used is 2-person regular standard residential hall is about 2.5%. So about 25% of our students are going to receive the 2.5% increase. We're actually drawing our reserves down. We have a policy of no more than minimum policy of 60 days in the housing side, and we're at 92 as the end of the fiscal year. So some of the reasons we're able to keep it in the 4.6% range as opposed to higher is we're actually using those reserves to help do some pay-go or some cash like deferred maintenance. So we're actually using the reserves appropriately, but not going below the recommended level. So we're looking very closely at that. Exactly. So we're not going below, but you'll see a drawdown in the financials. See it back down to 66 days. The deferred maintenance are things like boilers, plants, roofs, elevators, and there's been numerous meetings. I think Sarah Waters is here today from Housing's had at least 5 meetings with different student groups to get their approval. And you'll see things like our scholarship halls and the material agreed to a $1 per day per student increase in the meal plan because they want the type of food that they want. They make their own meals there. And that's really facing kind of against inflation when you're buying work. But so the dining side, looking at 5%, it's about $850,000. And that is driven by the cost of labor and being competitive for our students in the food market in the Lawrence area. So we're trying to get people to $11 per hour wages, $11 to $15 an hour to be competitive with the market. We're out there, we need to pay for that. So labor's a challenge, inflation's a challenge, so the numbers Ethan was throwing at their comment, all of us. And they have a lot of the kitchen equipment that is at the end of its life that needs to be replaced. So that's the reason for that. We're trying to get the plans aligned, get people back on campus, eating on campus. Where we can get the revenue we need out of that. So it's all a combination of bringing people back on campus, labor, inflation, and equipment on dining, and deferred maintenance and inflation on the housing side. And, as we all talked about, you can't charge us what you want. There's a market you have to address. There's things you have to do to meet with that. But I think one of the most important things is housing and dining. Back to commented earlier, it's part of your recruitment. People want to stay in places that are reasonably nice and have food options. So it's part of your strategic management side as well. So we're doing these things and asking for these increases to keep us competitive there, but recognizing the affordability that all students have as pillar one as Warner just mentioned. So that's our purpose. Where's that?
Morning. I want to introduce teammates that really have the wisdom of this. Cass Collin, who is our housing director, is with us today. Our vice president of engagement and student success, Shelley Herkey, is here with us today. Bella Price, our ASG president, and then we also have the vice president for infrastructure, Corey Baldini, who's here for some later discussions. So any really tough things we're going to toss out for them. So we are looking at about a 4.4% increase. The majority of that is driven by the increase on the food side, on the board side, and that is a product of our contract with our food vendor, who is Sodexo. And in that contract, each year they can raise the food prices by the amount of inflation. And we know on the food side, as Ethan pointed out, that is dramatically increased over just what I would call regular inflation, to keep it simple. And so that was well over 6% this year. Mostly that's trended around 2 to 3.5%. So when we blend that with what we feel is a really pretty low rate on the housing side, which is less than 3, it comes to the 4.4 for our double occupancy and less than that, 3.5% for our stock. Out of the last couple of years on the housing side, we really had 2 years of no increase due to the housing, modest increases due to the food. The money generated by this is around, just from the rate increase itself, is between the two is going to be less than $250,000. Everything that's generated by the food side will go directly to the vendor. None of that is retained by the university. So the housing system is getting 1,000. What you see in our financials on the third page in terms of less than $1 projected increase between this year and next year, should these rates go into effect, is really by working on our occupancy and bringing that back up to a place that is really more normal for us, that fell off in the pandemic, and it's just been in alignment with our trend down in our on-campus enrollment. So how are we going to get to that occupancy rate so that we can actually make these numbers work? Cass and his folks have been working really hard on how do we get our upperclassmen to stay in the halls, because we have a freshman requirement. And so last year we introduced to this body, and the board approved a discounted rate for our upperclassmen. And in addition to that, a lower block meal plan to entice them to remain in our halls. Because we have a very new stock, basically, inventory in our residence halls, having just built Sharon King Paul and renovating Abigail. And prior to that, we had singular Trussler back in 2010, Cass, 15, 16, and then renovated towers 5 or 6 years before that. So we feel good that we've got some good stock to offer, that students having certain expectations for their living standards. So the other thing that we added this year, in addition to those different rates, was the city partnered with us to offer a transfer scholarship to transfer students who came and lived on campus. And so we saw some benefit come out of that this fall. So continuing to work on programming and getting the students to live on campus. In terms of our reserves, you can see right in front of you, they have declined the last couple of years, and we're fortunate that we have them there. And actually, it's not a trend that we didn't expect. When we let bonds to build the new hall and renovate Abigail, we knew there would be about 7 tough years, even with modest increases in the rate, simply because we also refinanced an older bond issuance that I think we have 4 years left to pay on. So we prepared for that going into letting those bonds and building the new building. So what we've been trying to do, and I'd say Cass and his team have done an awesome job in the cost management. Same kinds of challenges that you heard. Staffing, the staffing in the hall has been down, the staffing on the Sodexo team has been down. trying to get people hired in when we have industries out in our, community that are paying rates twice as high as what we can afford to bring folks in. A lot of that's on that building, maintenance and custodial side. So we do hope to work on our occupancy along with a very modest rate, so that we can keep reserves in there. And, you know, it's well over half of the year's operating expenses, but we also have a great debt burden, on our halls that we are trying to also, maintain and take care of. So,
That's what you just said, so. What is your target?
Cass, you want to speak to that, how you calculate that?
What's the
The- Our target for our reserves. Sorry.
The minimum that we want to implement down to is the minimum, which gives us actually it's down. Just to give us a little bit more cushion coverage of.
Thank you. You mentioned the renovation of a lot of the rooms. What has been your occupancy rate, if you remember, the last 5 years? What's the trend? Not.
We have been in the high 80s, mid to high 80s, and slipped down into the 70s and 60s and when the pandemic hit. And so we are seeing a slight increase again since fall of 2020. We have seen that just incrementally start to increase.
What's the actual occupancy rate now?
It's in the 65%, I believe. 67 when we did this. It looks like actually after 20 days, we were at 65% occupancy.
And there's quite a spread between 67 and 80, your projection. C1. And you told us before how you're going to do that. Give us the diagrams. How is it you're going to make that significant incremental increase?
We've been having those conversations, and a couple of things is the really getting the full upperclassmen discount out there, and keeping those students once they're in our residence halls as freshmen, keeping them for their next couple of years with us. Spoke to the partnership with the city with some scholarships that go directly to the residents who choose to live in our halls. There are a couple of our initiatives underway to, and then just increasing our on-campus enrollment, which our management team has been very hard at, and we're seeing some positive numbers trending for next fall. So occupancy is really what drives the revenue stream, not the rates. And so just getting students on campus, getting them to live in homes. Cass, do you have anything you want to add to that from a programming aspect?
Just throw out specific numbers, because I'll specific. 81% next year will be 756 residents. And so our target would be 533 new freshmen, 133 returning students. And our international student population has been a big reduction for us in the past few years. It's fewer students that travel. It's going to be growing significantly.
Last question. Have you considered, you listed a number of different consolidating any of them, closing a wing or closing a particular dorm so that we increase occupancy in the others? Is that something that is even under consideration?
Absolutely, and I Cass elaborate on that, but that's exactly what we've been doing the last couple of years to, get more driven to a couple of facilities, so that reduces operations, and so you don't have that operation expense across all facilities. So Cass, if you want to speak to that, please feel free.
So we had good closed last year, South Dakota closed, this year, Everett Tower's closed. We're addressing some light, the further maintenance needs for father closed. We continue to report those beds as sellable. And so that's why our the occupancy rate we're showing is true rate of all of our spaces. So we have been doing that. And our goal, our plan is that next year we have more spaces open, but if we
Thank you.
yes.
But again, I must say that I admire the hard work that all of you from employee state have done over the months and several years to respond to movement challenges, revenue challenges. Very good. I admire the strong action you take on the can rebuild. That's the most exciting.
Morning. The Pittsburgh State Housing Guidance Request includes an increase that is 3% on single rooms and 100% on double rooms. Really, the inflationary pressure feeling same things you've been hearing, salaries, benefits, utilities, and food service. It is moderating service inflationary pressures, and we have seen some occupancy improvements over the last year that's been helpful as well. So that helps to mitigate those pressures in part. But we also recently went through a fairly exhaustive effort to obtain feedback from our students and members. That's identifying some opportunities for improvements and changes going forward. In particular, they expressed a desire to see some step forwards in the quality and selection and availability of food service options in the campus. So we're trying to address that in a couple of different ways. The first of those steps is identification. Previously to make a change to current dining plans. So that modifies bed substitutes for two different alternatives. The real focus there is increasing the number of dining dollars available in both of those plans, in particular. Second, those dining dollars can be used anywhere on campus at any of the food locations, and so they provide students with a bit of flexibility with where they take their meals. So that's directly in response to this feedback, and it's a first step that we can take to that feedback we received. So we're asking for that modification to the request. It's really just the first of two steps, though. We also are at the point for for a bid food service contract. So that process has just recently started, and as it continues throughout the next 7 months, there'll be a real focus on how can we find that food service provider to give the maximum degree of flexibility and options and quality available while maintaining the desired price points. I will tell you that feedback we received from students at the beginning of that process is a kind of cost of uncertainty that find some and it gives us some pause in terms of how we anticipated enough cost pressure then services that are desired. Frankly, maybe we asked for an increase that is alignment with what we should have asked for. And so that's something we contemplated. We noticed that we're kind of the lower end of the range of increases being listed. So that gave some pause as well. So we're continuing to follow up as we did. Our reserves recovered pretty nicely this past year, post-pandemic. Our target's about 2 million, and we're actually a bit above 2 million. That'll help us to address probably the other long-term concern we have, and that is that our deferred maintenance spending in recent years has been lighter than it needs to be over the long run. So we need to ramp up that spending to address all of the kinds of replacement activities that need to happen. So we would take a first step on that with those so that we step into, but that continues to be a term focus area that is to continue to.
Just, if it's $6,
So those dollars are really used on a dollar for dollar basis. It's what's useful about them is they can be used actively to use them there, but they can also be used at all of the other locations on campus. So there's a number of the student center and top and other locations other than on campus. And so they give students the flexibility to take one of their meals at Starbucks or one of the food service operations at the student center, be restricted to the.
All the universities have different separate food vendor contracts.
Yes.
Have you all ever discussed whether there's any benefits for having more buying power by picking one vendor, or two vendors?
So if I remember right, there are 4 of the 6 who have a contract with the vendor to provide dining services. I don't know if we ever seriously explored the possibility of a combined approach.
Is that something that is possible that you might consider?
I mean, it might be worth exploring. And in some cases, we've got vendors in that state and that's Sodexo, and so certainly gives us the opportunity to compare notes and the opportunity to leverage that service. We've not taken it to the next step. Probably we're thinking.
I would welcome any idea you have on that. I know that some vendors geographic things, some vendors just say they need sort of hey, sort of whatever. Hope that you'll deny open possible. One.
talk about what application fee. Very referred something else. And so just like the application fee there, there's kind of thoughts on that. Kind of look at it, try to.
Right. That's a good question. I don't think we specifically could take that out. In the past, we indicated the intent of a student to live in on-campus housing versus other functions. So it's a useful planning tool in terms of anticipating that your occupancy is going to be coming years. But it's a good question. We got it for the university application fee, and so.
Morning, I'm here today. I'd like to recognize our existing. Really, practice. But so for A State, we're doing the same pressures that we're doing with inflation. Reiterate the same, a lot of the same things. Jump to where we're asking 5% increase in housing, 2% increase in food. Blended rate gets into the 300s. And so that's what we're asking, 5% housing, so goes along with inflationary rates, you look at do it. Projects. Yeah. It's coming up, we have some flat towers we can carry, and so on, to make sure that we targets, that you've been asking that, about $2.5 million. We're above that now. And just try to continue to try to manage that, spend down our reserve for these one-time monies and then build it up and spend it on projects. Regards to the dining, 2%, that is in part, we use Chartwells. We do have a vendor of Chartwells. We're looking for, we're starting to prepare for an RFP that's going to be coming in. It's getting ready for that and taking a look at the market. We got some feedback from our students, from parents, that how the food prices are a little high compared to many of our competitors, and so smaller percentage increase makes sense to us to keep a bit of the market, but also to make sure we have value to specify those changes. Our occupancy rates in housing have been, after the pandemic, they dropped, they cut down to the 80s. We've been slowly gathering that up, and we projected 88% this year. The returns are actually positive this fall and next month. So if that holds for the spring, we'll be fine. Thank you.
Either way, you can speak to it.
Thank you. So this is Emporia's request to amend its FY23 capital improvement and reconceive of the more central renovation as a replacement project, essentially. This project provide a new home for the nursing department and student wellness center. And the analysis on this project is pretty interesting because in the context of the board's facilities capital renewal initiative, this project and the string of following projects that result from the replacement of buildings and the demolition, grazing of other obsolete structures that this really includes, basically takes 4.4% of the backlog here for maintenance offline. As well as looking at it's a 5-year time range, could potentially reduce the backlog by as much as 10%. So it's a really interesting project, and I know we're just done a lot of analysis to consider this amendment.
All right, I'm sorry for making you call from page.
And again, we have our vice president for infrastructure here for the Philippines, so we're in throw something that way, we're just going to enjoy the add to the comments here. But you heard about how it affects the further needs. I think the other things were, initially we're looking at the space optimization, and we needed to find a our nursing program because we've been partnering with the Richmond Council in their space because that's when the program actually started. And in 1990, it became a bachelor program, a bachelor of science program. Florida State started partnering with them. A little over a year ago, that they have other ideas for the use of the building that we're using. So we have a few options. We could stay, we could leave, we could buy, we could lease. And as we started thinking about where they're located, the fact that we had a vacant building in the middle of our campus, it seemed to make a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. Not only space optimization, but experience for our students, bringing them back into the mainstream campus, that we bring them home. And so originally we thought we could tuck that department into the building with some renovation. And after we actually hired Clark Huseman to come in and take a look, that is still an option. However, the better option really is to take that building down and replace it with a state-of-the-art facility. And allow the nursing department to program it in a way that underscores the premier program it is, particularly since nursing is something that the workforce is in dire need of. We feel like this would be very beneficial to our program. But alongside that, looking at our longer-term goals and reducing footprint, optimizing space, reducing deferred maintenance. We started looking a little bit beyond that because right next door to that vacant building are two older buildings that we've also been talking about. What is the future of those buildings? And how might we relocate some of the things in those buildings? And Corey and Bill McCurry and the facilities team alongside the deans have done a really, I think, stellar job of thinking about the future and thinking that longer term. So it's a big bite for us today, but in the long term, it will help us actually get to 12% footprint reduction by 2026. And I believe the goal is 15, so I feel like that is really quite a leap in a short amount of time to try to meet the goals in the deferred maintenance program. You also, the deferred maintenance, being able to take down 2 more buildings alongside would reduce our deferred maintenance by almost $18.5 million. So feel like to the future that this is really the better way to go. Little trepidation, we have a lot of heavy lifting to do, but we feel like we also have some options. And when I say heavy lifting, I'm meaning on the funding side. Just very honest about that. But in working with Clark Huseman, we feel like there are a couple models we can do, and that is just putting a building back up as Dallas Nursing and stop there. Or take that extra step and bring our student wellness center, which is counseling in the health center, into much nicer facilities. Also giving our students full opportunity for internships and collaboration. The academic side and student service side, nice pair, and it also puts them in close proximity to our athletic training program, which is just a building over. There's some great synergies that we feel like we could be capitalizing on in this area. So that's what I have to offer, and Freeze are adding that sort.
Thanks for thinking so much. That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chancellor Gerard will talk about it a bit this morning before the board meeting. We'll just give you a little bit of a preview of it. Going back to the earlier agenda item, the new Wilkins Center, it made us rethink everything about that particular site. One of the reasons why we have this on the agenda is we're bidding the 418A for capital planning. We had just a football stadium there for the last several years. We've rethinking that project, it's going to across campuses across the country, and the fact that we now really have a new entrance opportunity to the campus along Mississippi, down Mississippi Street, because it connects to the Welcome Center, it connects to the Union, and you really don't want to be building a facility that's used 8 times a year. It's more of about making that a site for multi-use, whether it's part of our conference and events strategic initiative, whether it may fit into that. Whether there's opportunities for other multi-uses such as entertainment. There's concepts of having some community medical facilities integrated in. All these are being discussed and analyzed and looked at with no specific determination yet. We have a study going on, an economic development study going on as we speak. We have some preliminary conceptual designs being done with our current architect on the contract. Helps with that, and we're gonna be looking at developer outreach as well to see what the development community may want to do. So this could end up being, you'll see a conceptual design in the program statement of what it may look like. But this is all evolving and developing as we need to replace a 100-year-old football stadium, which is about that. We need to have a more competitive football operations center. But it's way more than that. It's making that the new entrance to the campus for student enrollment and recruitment and how you see the campus when you come in. So it's really thinking broader and longer term. And we're calling it some football stadium, which is another Mississippi project, which is going to be a multi-use economic development in partnership with the city of Lawrence, looking at all the possibilities that we could do with that particular site, and also looking at the context of the campus, which is the crossing project, which is on the east side of the campus, and seeing how those partner together as well. But we have to modify the capital plan because one of the first things we have to do is we have to upgrade the water and sewer and the infrastructure there. That's going to be the first phase you see starting next year. And then as we evolve this and develop the design and the concepts and come up with what's the right mix to make maximum use of that site, that will be determined going forward. So that is in a really high level nutshell what that project is about. It is intended to be, the chancellor will call it the gateway project. That could be the way you come into the campus and experience the 21st century welcome center, experience the union, experience the campus, and there would be a new facility there. It would be more than a football stadium. It would be a true multi-use facility, used 365 days a year, hopefully, not just 8 days a year for football. So that's the concept.
My understanding is, while not yet finally, one of the possibilities for the multi-use area would be a medical facility. Has that been developed? Is that?
That's being under discussion, but there's no, it's not based on to determine that. But if you look at Oregon State, this is a really classic example. There are community medical facilities built into their stadium was a major funding source of it. So that is a possibility that we would do a partnership with be primary care for the community and for faculty and for athletes, all those things that you can get. That's one of 25 different ideas out there. We're open to what is in the best interest of the university and the best interest of the community. And that's why we're having an economic development study going on right now. And so everything's in dialogue and discussion. We will have that completed in early February is when we'll have it in its final form. Then it's looking at what the market might want, and then that will help us if we're going to do a developer partnership on a particular site. And then, housing is considered there as an alternative to look at facility and site, whatever works best for the university. Sarah and JJ and I were here to support housing and dining. We talked about this yesterday as well. So it's all being discussed and looked at, and alternative designs look at anything. We have conceptual to see in the program statement, but this all will evolve to be what's the best one.
Restaurant.
What?
Restaurant.
What if the market said could be a possibility. I don't know if the market's there or not. We'll see.
A couple of years ago, I made a business with him. The guy out with sat to dinner, and then he said, "I'm picking out the best place being in I love it. It was dining room at the stadium. It felt really fancy and nice. He said it's the best food in love. So just FYI, it's really good food.
Yeah, you can go to the Baylor Stadium and see like a dining facility inside that stadium as well. So when you look at the modern stadiums, they are more than a football experience. Sitting in the stands, they are dining options, they are conference facilities, they have bathrooms in them, academic units, they have student services in them. We're looking at all those.
threw down the gauntlet about meals and athletic facilities that you're eating in ours tonight. Hopefully we can exceed your expectations. Yeah. Mr. Chairman, committee, thank you for allowing K-State to have a bit of a late admission for this program statement that you have in front of you. We are requesting permission to amend our capital improvement project plan and accept the program statements for essentially phase 1 and phase 2 construction of the Global Center for Brain and Food Innovation, as well as renovations to Call and River Hall. That's all kind of considered a singular project in our minds. And then we also have included in there a program statement for construction of the livestock competition arena and horse unit as well, which is also tangentially related to this project. So in scope, it's quite an exciting opportunity for K-State as we work to modernize our facilities and also reach out and broaden different types of research initiatives and really expanded and transdisciplinary research. This does fit within our campus facilities master planning process that the College of Agriculture completed on the North Agronomy farms and also within the main campus areas. So those fit within our master plan that we have developed for the college. The Global Center, which is the newer construction, which would in essence replace Schallenberger and Feed Tech. Those two facilities would be able to be taken offline once we have that Global Center fully constructed. That will strengthen existing programs, support our innovative initiatives underway, and harness our strengths in brain science and animal sciences to support transdisciplinary research in food safety. Hall and Weber Hall are clones to our animal sciences and industry. That is the college's largest department, but they operate in buildings that were constructed in the 50s and 60s. So when you get a tour of them tomorrow, you'll be able to step back in time and get a real sense of what those facilities look like when they first built. It does need comprehensive renovation to address significant deferred maintenance. And teaching and research lab modernization. So the way they're constructed, the equipment they have within them just really don't meet today's standards. We're not able to actually teach to industry standards that they've adjusted to over the years since the 50s and 60s. So this is a real opportunity for us to modernize the facilities and also allow us to teach to students what industry is really requesting that we provide to them. It will also create a new front door for the College of Agriculture there between Hall and Weber complex, and it will be a new opportunity for strategic enrollment management as we think about bringing in students to look and be in modern facilities today. Way we are structuring this is in 2 phases for the Global Center and the renovations to Hall and Weber. We'll have the phase 1 will construct part of the Global Center that runs about $70 million. And then we're going to be looking at the balance then going to select renovations in Hall and Weber. So in total for phase 1, $100 million project. That will be our challenge grant submission that we will be turning in for consideration in December 7th. So that will be the primary project that we're working in. Then we would follow up as fundraising becomes available or we can identify additional resources. We would follow up with phase 2. That's bringing in a second section of the Global Center, as well as continuing the renovations in Hall and Weber. That would run about $53 million based on our current project estimates. I'll skip then over to the livestock research arena, which is that third project that we are considering as well, which does relate then to phase 2 of the project I just described, because a component of that would be taking down either half or a portion of the Weber Arena and leaving only behind enough space to do academic teaching requirements, showing cattle, showing livestock, and being able to basically get students around that type of livestock educational that's required. But really, a lot of the show activities, we would transition up to this new livestock competition arena that would be built adjacent to our family scout center near our purebred beef unit. It would feature an arena that would be fully enclosed, about 130 to 250 foot arena, and allow us to have additional spectator seating up there, about 3,000 seats in the lobby with concessions and restrooms. So that project is currently estimated at $26 million, also including building sustainability funds as well. If we have the opportunity for a second round of challenge grant applications, this would be our second project that we would submit to leverage any additional urban dollars that be out there. We do need to have an arena. I want to make sure that we're still providing that opportunity. So, Mr. Chairman, that's a rough, quick look. I also have Dean Marie Minton, or Dean of the College of Agriculture, intimately familiar with these projects. And I often have, if you have any questions about Katie Lauer, Associate Vice President. Those are often the one.
Well, these thanks to start. Having said that, I was on page you've given us 4 months.
We appreciate that. Katie.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So.
Of course, we don't want to be comprehensive, but respect our. Awesome.
So this computer, we got the board passed the policy framework for facilities in June of 2021. That policy framework laid out a new reporting cycle and facility reports that will be simple, and it will basically provide a good overview of all the progress made so far by the universities regarding the goals of the facility improvement initiative. It will also come in at things that this year, FY23, is the official beginning of the facilities initiative, will make possible in years to come. We know that there's additional funding that's being prioritized on projects, and we'll include all of that in the report and solutions. An executive summary, I'll also say an executive summary in advance of the meeting so that the Fiscal Affairs and Audit Committee can get a preview, and then we can have a full report.
Great, and I think Flash will suggest some of the questions we had. Some other meetings to all the rest of what we're creating on that timeline. So, so that takes us to your content. All right, so as you bring up your information, let me context setting. So this has to do with the technical education. Our responsibilities associated with that, because of this TDA, we felt like convincing from last year. Some of the visions we had seen that we got last time and discussions about asking for action by the TDA. So I think it's very fortunate we're talking about the call right now as well. So this will give us some background how it's done. So it's all for familiarity with action today, but it's be able to consider so this.
All right, so as the speaker between you and lunch over the student union, we're going to fly through this pretty quickly. So as Regent Ice outlined, the funding for the community colleges and the technical colleges funnels through our agency. We get appropriations for delivering technical and non-technical courses to our students, and we get a separate appropriation, almost $40 million for high school students as well. The cost model is what we use. I've been using to calculate what state aid or even state loan should be. And the original bill was actually enacted back in 2011, and that bill arose after years of discussion among the higher ed community. It was requested by the TEA and the Board of Regents, and it is that change that was made previous to this time. There was simply a community college operating rate. It's got a lump sum. This was to transform that state aid to delivering X number of courses, you get X dollars. And so there was not to be an alignment between the courses you're delivering, state aid that you get. That state aid and those costs are recalculated every year, and we do that using the cost model. Now, originally, the cost model was targeted at just the technical classes, but that was changed to apply also to our non-technical classes. It's called tiered and non-tiered. This applies only to Kansas resident students. So for a college that brings in someone from another state, if they are non-resident, they don't add up in those courses. It is done right at our level, and they are arranged into different categories or tiers. They're recognized as different costs for delivering a different class. So think of what you might have to spend to deliver a well-done class versus an English composition class. That's what we're trying to get at. We also, in the cost model, take into consideration the local property levy generated for the credit hours from industry community college students. So what are the elements of the instructional cost model? There are 4. We have instructor costs. What are you paying for the instructor for their salary and wages? What are you paying to run your institution? So institutional support, instructional support. These are higher end verbiage, and they're align their overhead expenses to run the campus. And we add those 3 items together to get what we pay at college for a non-technical class. For a technical class, then a tier class, we add on what is called extraordinary class. Again, you have capital outlay, you have expenses for a more expensive class. So the cost model is determining to get at that education. So of the 4 elements, instructors, instructional support, institutional support, and extraordinary costs, we have set definitions, what those mean, and we have particular sources that we rely on to get the information. So for example, from the institution or from their financial audits every year, we get their instructional support and their institutional support. So think of what they have to spend to run the campus, keep the lights on, maintain their physical plans, pay their president and their VPs and their administrators, and then we have instructors. So what are we paying our instructors? For that information, we rely on the cost and productivity study, which is a national cost study conducted every year, and it happens to be a Joseph County Community College, but it is a national study. They have a benchmarking institute. And they get that information from institutions across the country, and then they provide us that information. The extraordinary costs, we, every so often, not every year, but on a periodic basis, have collected information from the schools on what are their extraordinary costs. What have you actually been spending on these classes? We have limitations. You can't, for example, if you give a student a uniform or they must purchase a uniform, that's not part of this. It is those things that the school must purchase to deliver those classes. So we look at that, we're reevaluating that periodically, and we're going to talk a little bit more about extraordinary costs, but those are the 4 elements. Those are the 4 elements. Every course, and there are hundreds and hundreds of classes, and the only thing I want you to get out of this is that we take every course and assign it to a composite rate. So it's assigned to a tier. We have 25 composite rates, and we have 6 tiers of classes. So you have less expensive classes, and you have more expensive classes. Every year, those dollars you see over time, they have been adjusted. And so, for example, for a non-tiered class in 2011, it was $146 credit. In 2021, it was $222. Okay, extraordinary costs. By definition, those are the required specific equipment and consumable materials needed for technical improvement. There is no national base source of this. And when we, in years when we have not gone to the colleges and asked for updated information, we have simply applied the HEPI, we call HEPI, the higher end price index, to those costs to try to adjust for inflation in those. We have done periodic actual cost data collections. In 2020 and 2021, we had 2 rounds of updates to the extraordinary costs. In round 1, we looked at a number of programs. 40 programs were determined their extraordinary costs should just be the same, no change. 24 programs were determined that they needed to be increased. 14 programs were reduced. Same in round 2, we had 26 programs left the same, 19 were increased, 14 were reduced. And now we've come to round 3. And round 3, we've been told, TEA started to talk about this back in September. They're slated to talk about this Friday of this week. In this schedule, as I understand it, 20 programs were supposed to be left unchanged. 5 programs were to be increased, but 6 were to be reduced. And those 6 include some critical need areas, PT assistant, EMT paramedic, but most pointedly the RN, LPN programs. So let's talk a little bit. So that the extraordinary costs are an element of what does it cost to deliver the program? So that's the expense side of the ledger. When you look at then, well, how do you finance those expenses? The instructional cost model finances those in different ways depending on the student. So if the student is at a community college and they come from within that taxing district, the property tax is supposed to cover a third, the student covers a third, and the state covers. That represents about 37% of the credit hours at the community. The other community college district, students are all out district. So if you live in Hayes and you go to Colby Community College, you're not in the community college's taxing district, so you're out district. That is roughly 43.5% of your community college credit hours. Same thing for the tech colleges. You are basically always out district when you're in a tech college, because it's 2/3 state, 1/3 student. There is no problem. Our high school students who are in Excel and CTE, they're entirely state aid. There is no tuition, they're prohibited from charging tuition, no property taxes to use for it. And just a little chart here, you have this about how, what percentage of our district and industry students there are tiered versus non-tiered. I thought it might be helpful looking at time. I can have 2 examples. If John is an in-district student at Green Valley Community College studying a certain class, how would the state cover that? So in that case, state aid would be 1/3 of course rate. But Jane at a tech college studying wind energy technology, she would be 1/3 student, 2/3. Adding up the 2020, 2021 cost model calculations, you can see because the in-district students are only about 37% of the total, the property tax levy that is taken into account in the cost model comes to about $35 million. State aid is $120 million. Student tuition would be $78 million. 1/3, 1/3, or 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, how that pans out when you roll up everybody's numbers. For the tech college, it's roughly 30.7 million state, 15.4 million students. No problem. The cost model application. So we have spread out calculated, but then in legislative budget provisions, the legislature has applied a never. We want you to basically have time to hold everybody's. So up until this fiscal year, since the dawn of the we've never really truly adopted it.
we basically given everybody a share of what they got before relative to the prior year, regardless of either one, to some extent. We have different varieties of year. But just know that this is the first year where we're really actually likely to apply them on. So now the customer has a little bit more, starting to some more interest. In this year, we actually got the share, this calculation, that is the first year we've ever had that. Up until this year, there's always been a looking back at student movements would have said tier to non-tier they should have been X dollars, and you never ever got there until this year. This is after the first year we would have been. Yeah, but the proviso for this year is saying even if regular should give a letter they we're going to hold you they the prior year. So when we approved it now back in June for this year, nobody received less year than non-tier. And I have lost returns. So that was a very good of the cost model. There is a lot more detail and nuance behind this. But the only other point I would make is according to the 2022 session, we're supposed to take a 3-year migration toward the term all recentering. So over 3 years, we're going to actually fund the so that could mean very well.
So that. So I mean, what's happened in time? We figured. Okay, so I'm. Kind of detail. Lots of terminology. So. Let me get questions if you think. Questions, would you entertain that?
You do that in the chat.
November 26th. So. Sessions that
I agree. This seems like there's these various little pockets of responsibility we have, which when uncovered are pretty significant. So, that's a quick question. Sure. What's the total amount of dollars that is distributed?
Total amount shared is roughly 45 million, tiered and non-tiered, and then you add some TTE as another funding money.
What extent do the Board of Regents have discretion about having this? So is this just is the formula written in law and this is?
There is no pressure. And so when the statute indicates for a legislative proviso, says you shall do it this way, that is what we did.
what's very important. And then of course, like I said, on the other hand, some is that all the time. Do it. So probably just the discussions. Thank you. So that I think takes us to
It does, and Mr. Chairman, I didn't.
So I'll just note that we talked about the gender equality. So thanks everybody, sorry for the life. Oh, you.